In setting up community radio initially, I was quite influenced with the credit union movement and that model of participatory involvement. So I think community radio is in that sort of mould and is very much now an Irish social movement. The other big feature this year is, in fact, as the Minister mentioned, is the Broadcasting Act, and I think it poses a lot of real challenges for us in the future. In the definition of community radio, it mentions that a community radio station should provide a social benefit for that community. So I think again we need to know what is a social benefit. We've yet to define it. I know there's been some work done on it, but I think there's more work still to be done on just what social benefit is. And we shouldn't forget in dealing with the BAI that they are the regulators of broadcasters, and we do need to think about our audiences. And maybe we need to sort of redefine some of that again for ourselves and talk about active audiences and the participation that we're asking of people. And of course I've also been reminded that all day today we haven't mentioned the entertainment at all. So again, we're serious about our media, but we don't need to be po-faced about it and bore people. So I think the challenge for us is to arrive at a mix of media that is interesting and provocative and challenging to people. Again, Michael O'Keefe this morning mentioned, I think the figure was 46% of the fund, the Sound and Vision Fund, is going to community radio. That's a significant sum of money, and again, we need to look at how we use that in these areas of social benefit, and how we're going to develop our unique form of media that fits in with the mix that the Minister and Bob Collins will be obliged to develop. I think we have a role to play in offering our definition and working with the BAI in the future to develop a unique strand of media in Ireland that is of social benefit to our citizens. Thank you.
Yeah, we in community radio are here not because of a technology, but because we believe in community development and we believe in social communication as a means of community development. The things we're doing are local news, local information, discussion, dialogue and debate, providing a platform for local talent, etc. All of these things work extremely well on radio because it's a flexible, low cost, easy to use, easy to learn medium. But so is the internet, and so will be the mobile phone. We have to, in the next few years, think of ourselves as community media, community communication projects, move away from brochure websites for our radio stations, move towards a situation where probably in the medium term the internet and the mobile platform will begin to overtake FM listening. That means we've got to rethink a little bit about how we do what we do, but I think it's actually very good news. It means that all of our participants, users, listeners, audiences and so on can be not only contributing to radio as an interactive medium, but sending their photos, their video blogs, their text blogs, communicating with us on chat spaces and forums and so on. But we have to create the spaces in which this can happen, otherwise there is a danger we'll be left behind.
Yeah, I'm going to be very boring and just say one of the key challenges I think is resourcing and sustainability. I was delighted to hear the Minister, in terms of his commitment to community radio. But I do think there is a huge desire in communities around the country to have community radio stations, but quite often they're not able to fulfil that because they're not in a position to resource those stations. And I think also at the core of community radio is a responsibility to ensure access for groups that are marginalised, that don't have media access, and again that is something that doesn't happen organically. It's something that needs resourcing, and I think that is going to be a key challenge in the years ahead. I think also, as we talked before, the opportunities about media literacy and the important role that community radio can play in terms of just enabling groups to to understand and to use the internet, and just the challenge that we have in terms of retraining and reskilling people. Yeah, so that's really it. I think the key challenge is sustainability, in particular financial stability.
I've kind of said a lot of what the future, or how I think that community radio can contribute to the voluntary sector and its development, and vice versa. I guess particularly to answer this question about the future, being a complete, I have to say, ignoramus in relation to community radio, up until, I guess, the more recent involvement with CRAOL and over the last few years, and sort of putting back on that hat that I used to wear of my ignorance. I would think that one of the key challenges is, well, what's the difference between community radio and other forms of community media? And you mentioned it earlier in the panel, the internet, the mobile phone, and obviously there's television as well. So finding the right place for, I guess, the broader spectrum of community media, and doing that in a constructive way. And I don't know what the politics are, I'm completely ignorant. But that, I think, would be a sort of a critical success factor, for the movement, which is a movement. And I applaud its existence of community radio, because it is simple, it is accessible. And so that would be one of the key challenges that I see if I were suddenly parachuted into your sphere. I had sort of other notes written down, but everybody has said them already. So I'm not going to say anything other than that. As a user, as a consumer of community radio, or a consumer of radio, the radio is on in my house all the time. It never gets switched off. I am a repeat of my parents, clearly. But so it has to be attractive. If community radio is going to be listened to by me as a person, one person out of 4 million, then it has to offer something for me, and you know that more than I do. But in the increasingly, I guess, bombarded noise environment and the multi-channel and multi-station environment, getting that, and your unique selling point is the community, it's the local, it's the connections, it's the participation, it's the helping me engage with my community, and that is something that I'm using, not me, Deirdre, but me as a typical person. That's something that people and I find attractive, and I think keeping that and not losing it, and I think will be very important. Thank you.
Without saying things that will cause me to repeat myself in a minute, and what I would have to say to you later on will be brief, if for no other reason than I have to be out of here at 11:04, so that makes life easier for everybody. I think that there are a number of key principles to try to predict where community anything is going to be in any number of years' time. I think is foolhardy, but there are a number of key principles. Communities are associations of human beings, of individuals, and one of the key things that individuals do is that they give expression to themselves, and they communicate their own sense of themselves. In many other states, the population of the state of Ireland, 4.4 million people, would be a very small region, would itself be catchment area of a local radio station. I think that we'll touch upon this later on. I think one of the key challenges that faces all of us in the context of a globalized communications environment is redefining community and ensuring that we retain a grasp of the essence of community in a context where the distant is immediate. My computer brings me on a very regular basis, in my particular interest, classical music, radio channels from Erfurt and Matrina. And you can become slightly disoriented in that kind of an environment and lose touch with the rootedness that all of us require, perhaps even more than ever we did, in a globalized environment. And I think that's one of the areas where community radio, as a physical manifestation of the reality of community life has an important role.